Hi, and welcome to GED Social Studies Lesson 3. We're working today in Kaplan's GED textbook, page 458 and 459. Today's lesson centers around political parties, discussion, and the road to the White House. This is a bigger lesson than many because there's a lot of information to cover. The first part of the discussion is about the parties. In the United States, there were two major parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. So let me talk about the Democrats first. We talk about their states representative as blue states, blue governors. Anything that's blue is Democratic. They're also represented by a donkey. Let me explain the difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The Democratic Party takes care of people, has more social programs. The Republican Party is more about big business. Well, why is the Democratic Party blue? Well, in the 2000 election between Al Gore and George Bush, there was an Electoral College map. And to differentiate which candidate was winning which state, they used two colors, red and blue. Blue was Democratic, and it's still used today. In 1828, Andrew Jackson was running for president. His running mate called him a jackass, which is a donkey. Still used today with political cartoons, you will see elephants and donkeys. Donkey is Democratic, elephant, Republican. Republican Party. This is more of a money party in terms of taking care of business. Big business, business corporation, and Wall Street, which has to do with stocks and bonds and finances. The Republican Party is represented by red. It's also represented by the elephant. You might have heard the term GOP or Grand Old Party, and this is the party, which is Republican, that was associated years ago with several military defense missions of the Union. We call it the Grand Old Party, GOP. The political system is big, confusing, sometimes difficult to understand. Now again, why is the Republican Party red? This again goes back to the 2000 election with Al Gore and George Bush, when they used that map to determine the winner for the Electoral College. In this case, anything red was Republican. Why the elephant? Well, in the 1870s, and then pretty much adapted and adopted in the 1880s, a cartoonist used the elephant to symbolize the Republican Party and Ulysses S. Grant, who was a general in the Civil War. He also ran for the President of the United States. There was a threat that he was going to run a third term, and they called him an elephant. This is now called a party affiliation. But what does it mean? It really means that I have a choice. Every citizen of the United States has a choice. I can decide what party I want to be with. I can also choose my parties and flip-flop or fluctuate. So every citizen can decide which party he wants based on the party's beliefs. If I am worried about capitalism and finances, I might agree with the Republican Party. If I'm concerned about social programs and welfare reforms and the women's right to choose, I might choose the Democratic Party. Notice change. I can pretty much decide that I'm a Democrat, but the candidates have platforms. And during a particular election, if I like what the other candidate has to say, I can vote for that other candidate. I don't have to stay a Democrat or a Republican. I can choose. I might be a registered Democrat or a registered Republican, but there are other parties. No other party has ever won an election except the Democrat or Republican. But there are other parties that you might have heard. Socialist Party, Libertarian Party, the Green Party, the Tea Party, and the Independent Party. Independents are not strict Democrats or strict Republicans. They're in between. Now, earlier I mentioned the platform. It's not like you're standing on something, yet actually the candidate is standing on his or her beliefs. These are their policies, opinions, ideas. They can be tax reform. Should we increase taxes or give tax rebates or refunds? Social Security has to do with money. The women's rights, freedom of choice, abortion. Educational spending. How much goes to your school system? What about college funds? What about college student loans? Immigration and immigration reform. The platform has to do with deciding who can come into this country and who can't. But it's up to those political leaders to say whatever they believe. And environment protection, EPA, global warming. Is this really happening? What do we have to do to fix it, to change it, to amend it? So these are ideas, opinions, thoughts, views that our politicians campaign on, and we as citizens get to choose. Which do I prefer? Which do I like? Which do I believe? And then I will vote. Now that we have the person and the platform, who runs? Well, if you're in government or want to be in government, you decide that you're going to run for office. It's not an easy process. You have to raise money. You have to have a lot of money. There's advertising, travel, staff. You have to get your message out to the American public. They have to know you. If you want their votes, they need to know who you are. You travel to different states. You debate other people. States then hold primary elections, and we're going to talk about that in a second. This PowerPoint has been basically about the federal elections for President of the United States. But we have state elections, county elections, and local government elections. The process is still the same. You need money. You need to campaign. You need a platform, your ideas, what you're running for and against. With the federal, the national elections, you campaign in different states. The candidates debate and discuss each other. States hold primary elections or a caucus. A caucus is a discussion, and then people talk about the candidate they like. In the primaries, people actually vote. The candidate with the most votes in that election, state election, wins that state. So what do they actually win? The term is delegates. They need people. And after a time of campaigning, the candidate who reaches 1,991 delegates first is declared the winner or will receive the nomination for his or her party, the Democratic or Republican Party. That is the person who is going to represent the party in the presidential election. After this is over, the candidate has a convention where they are officially nominated. Well, what happens now? So we now have the convention. We know who the candidate is for president of the United States, but that presidential candidate now selects his or her vice president. They travel around the country campaigning. Again, they're spreading their message. This is what I want. This is what I'm going to do. They call these campaign pledges and promises. We hope they will accomplish these goals, and that's why we listen to what they have to say and ultimately vote on the candidate of our choice. The candidates debate each other. They hold rallies. They give speeches. They make phone calls. They have staff. They're on social media. They send out literature and make personal appearances. They need to get their message out. They want to win the election, and they want to be your president. What's in it for them? Your vote. They want your vote. They campaign hard. They make a lot of speeches, again, going around the country. You see them on social media and on your television. They must campaign. They want your vote. They want to win the election. They want to be your governor, your legislator, your senator, your congressperson, or your president for the United States. The national election is held every 4 years and always, always in November. It's called the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. Why? Because our founding fathers set it up that way. I don't really know. November is a good month. Not too cold, not too hot. So we go to the polls, the place where you vote. They call that a polling place. Where you vote, you cast your ballot in a private, personal voting booth, an election. It is a private, secret ballot. Unless you tell somebody, nobody has to know the candidate that you chose. This concept is a little strange. So we have the popular vote, people who vote in each state, but then we have this process called the Electoral College, and it's not a college. It's where a group of electors are chosen from each state. Those people then vote for the president. So if the majority of people in a state vote for a particular candidate, then those electors put their votes towards the electoral candidate. So the numbers are different. The result from each state determines the election. It's based on population. The Electoral College consists of all 50 states. The ultimate goal, they call it a magic number, is 270 Electoral College votes. The person who gets 270 first and more than that becomes your President of the United States. Some people think that this whole process is very unfair, and it might be. Is it probably going to change? No. So here's the story. It's based on population of a state. Different states, different populations, different density, different amount of delegates. So a state like California, a big state, a lot of people, that state has 55 electors. A state like Vermont, small, not so populated, it's cold up there. They only have 3 delegates. Now your candidate needs to go around the country and try to win as many delegates as he can. That's the goal if he wants to be your president. You might have to campaign in a lot of states, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, North Dakota, South Dakota. You'll win a few Electoral College votes, whereas if you go to California, you win 55. It's still important to go to every state. You want as many delegates as you want. You need that magic number, 270, to win the nomination. Now, is it possible to win the popular vote and lose the election? And the answer is yes, which is why people think it's unfair and the law should be changed. In the 2000 election between Al Gore and George Bush, Al Gore won the popular vote. But in the end, Bush won Florida, and the state of Florida pushed him over the delegate count. He won the election. As recently as 2016, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, but the president is Donald Trump. He won more delegates with the Electoral College. So let's review. The United States Congress in 1789 created the Electoral College. He established the Electoral College. What was life like in 1789? Well, there were 13 colonies which became the original 13 states. They had no idea what the United States was going to become. So the founding fathers decided that they wanted equal representation and were concerned with balance and equal opportunity. What if some states had more people than others? How would people know who was even winning or running for an election in the first place? Transportation was horseback. Remember, this is 1789. They didn't have email in 1789. They hardly had mail in 1789. So the purpose was to have equal representation and a fair and equal opportunity. Is it fair? Well, it's debated all the time. Is it equal? That's up for discussion. Will the Electoral College be changed? Probably not. So I get that this is a huge lesson, bigger than many. There's a lot to cover, even though this is really still one page of reading, page 438. See if you understand it. It's very complicated. How much will be on the actual GED test? Well, you need to understand how our government functions. Remember, we're basically a two-party system. It's just not that simple, though. Try then the assignment on 439. And remember, if you have any questions, email me at jherring@greenbeltmd.gov. jherring@greenbeltmd.gov. See you next time.